Okay, guys. So this video is just going to cover the new materials that are handed out to you, and also they're posted in the exam review folder. Just going over some basic test taking strategies, some reminders from College Board, what they want to see on the test, what they don't need to see on the test, and then just other test taking strategies that I suggest that you kind of think about. That'll help you with the final exam and also with the AP exam. And then a couple of extra review materials that might help you in preparing. And so all this again is posted in the exam review folder. So if you just want to read it yourself, you don't need to watch this video. But for those of you that like to hear it verbally as well as read it, and you enjoy my silky smooth voice, then congratulations, this video is for you. All right, so again, I just want to show you some of the materials, and then talk about some test taking strategies that I suggest, but also test taking strategies from College Board themselves, how to take the AP chemistry exam. So let's just go into it. All right, so the first things are just some review materials that I have for you. So you're going to get a copy of this in class. But it's kind of dark. The copy is kind of dark. So if you want to open it electronically, this is posted in the exam review folder. But what the next two materials are things I had my students make last year and the year before for the students who were taking the test online. If you were taking the test online at home, then College Board designed the test to be really fast, and because they couldn't, there was no way for College Board to police having notes or anything. So they just assumed everyone had their textbooks out, everybody had their notes out, everybody had Google open on another device and that kind of thing. So this would not be considered cheating. So what I had my students who were taking the test online do is make an annotated formula sheet, so just quick reminders, and just a quick reference guide, a quick reference cheat sheet for them to use on their test. And I just want to share with you kind of the best ones that I got. So this is an annotated formula sheet, and it has a bunch of reminders and stuff on there. So this is good. This might help you with the formula sheet assignment that you have for review, but it's just really good reminders. Like in the equilibrium section, they have the what Q is about. They have the KSP shortcuts, common ion, make a Rice chart. So like all these little reminders. The graphing stuff, which we're going to talk about today for kinetics. That's the one side, and then where's the other side? Here's the other side. Okay, so reminding you bonds broken minus bonds formed. That's the only time you do reactants minus products, but then everything else is there. Endothermic, exothermic, all that stuff. Let's see any other good ones. Here we go. Here's your Beer's law. Absorbance and concentration are proportional. So anyway, this is just a good thing, just a quick reference guide. This would be like, as you're walking into your final exam, have this out just to remind you stuff. As you're walking into your AP chemistry exam, have this out to just remind you of different things. Now, you're not going to be able to have it out during the test. That would be cheating, but it's there. Okay, for you to help review. The other thing I have here is a cheat sheet that a student made. And again, you're going to get copies of this, but the copies are kind of dark. So if you want to open it up electronically, again, this is also posted. And if you can read the handwriting, let me see if I can rotate this. Where would I go? Come on. View, rotates. All right, if I can rotate this, it's got a lot of nice reminders. A little bit too many reminders, like maybe too much stuff. Like, remember, you're not going to need, no, I got to rotate it back. You're not going to need, you shouldn't need the expanded octet hybridizations and the expanded octet shapes. they claim that stuff's not on, but every once in a while they throw it on there. So maybe it would be helpful. But reminding you of bond angles, hybridization, what shapes they are, that kind of thing. How to calculate formal charge, that's always a good one. And intermolecular forces. So again, this is just another thing to reference. And again, you won't be able to use it on the test because it's not an online test anymore. But as you're walking in to the final exam, as you're walking in to the AP chemistry exam, this is the stuff you study at the last second, right? So you do your bulk of your studying, you review the learning objectives, you review the all your old unit tests, you look through all that stuff, but then the night before the test, the morning of the test, you're not going to sit there and cram everything, but you have these are the reminders. These are the things that the bulk of the exam is going to cover, right? This would be 80% of the exam, and probably even more. The stuff that's on this sheet and on the annotated note is what's going to is going to cover 90% of the material. And there might be some other things that aren't necessarily on there, but they would be in the visible learning document. But again, best case scenario, a 72% could give you a 5. Worst case scenario, a 79 could give you a 5. So again, yeah, it would be awesome if somebody got 100% on the AP exam, but understand that when that's very rare, and when somebody actually gets 100% on the AP chemistry exam, they write articles about national, international articles, how I got 100%, so it's doable. But again, your goal, I don't care if you get a 5. If you get a 5, that's awesome. And if you got the lowest 5, a 79, awesome. If you got 100%, awesome. If you got 98%, awesome. It's a 5's a 5. You know what I mean? So these are just kind of, just the last minute things like, oh yeah, substitutional interstitial alloy, I got it, right? And if you see it right before the test, then you're not going to make that mistake during the test. And it's just a difference between, 3% here, 2% there, and it adds up, and you go from a 3 to a 4, or you go from a 4 to a 5. And, it's those kind of things that you want to do. All right, so let's talk test taking strategies. So this is more for the actual AP exam itself, because remember, for your final exam, you have the checklist. So I would really lean hard on those checklists because that's where your time is going to come from. Okay. Now, your final exam, multiple choice, is only going to be 50 questions. But when you take the AP chemistry exam, it's going to be 60 questions. So let's understand, time is I would say 50% of the test. I would say 50% of the test is testing your chemistry knowledge. The other 50% is testing your time skills in a test, your time management skills, and also your reading comprehension skills, right? So, your chemistry, you got your chemistry, but now it's, figuring out what is the question asking about, all right? So time management, right? This has already been stated, right? We already know how to do this, but you should only spend 1.5 minutes on each multiple choice question. Now, if you answer one of the multiple choice questions in 10 seconds, that frees you up more time for other ones. So if you find yourself on a multiple choice question where maybe you know how to do it, it's just you're going to have to do some calculations, you don't have your calculator, it's going to take you some time to do it, then maybe that's one you skip and come back to if you have time. And if you don't have time, you just make your best guess. All right, so I don't know how the SAT is structured anymore, but on the AP chemistry exam, there's no penalty for guessing. So when your test is over, when the 90 minutes are up for your multiple choice, you should have every question, you should have a bubble in all 60 spaces. All right, you shouldn't leave anything blank. All right, that would be really dumb of you to do. All right. So that's number one, right? So if you find yourself, you've been on a question for 3 minutes, you have to move on. And if it's something you have totally no idea, don't sit there and try to make it come back to you. Maybe make a star at it in your test booklet and come back to it if you have time, but take your best guess because you don't know and move on. If it's something you do know, then maybe leave it blank, and then at the last minute you can make a guess, or if you have extra time once you get to the end and you have that extra time to go back and review, you can go back and figure out the actual answer, okay? So that's number one. On the free response, this has already kind of been advertised. The first 3 questions, that's where you're gonna get the bulk of your points. Remember, the free response is only 46 total points. You get 10 for question 1, 10 points for question 2, 10 points for question 3, and then 4, 5, 6, and 7 are each worth 4 points. So question 4 is only worth 4 points, question 5 is only worth 4 points, question 6 and question 7, right? So your goal is to get as many points as possible, right? But the only way you're gonna get as many points as possible is if you get through the entire test. So again, if you might be working through question 1, and if you realize you've spent 30 minutes on question 1, you got to move on, okay? Especially question 6, question 7 are usually easier questions. But the majority of students miss them or don't get points for them because they just don't make it, okay? And remember, you're gonna have more time on the actual AP exam for these questions than you will on the final. Okay, so just remember the final, you're gonna have less time, but it's kind of having that final exam checklist for your FRQ kind of makes up for that lack of time that you're gonna have, all right? All right, so again, hey, it would be incredible if we had a student get 100% and they write up a story and you guys thank me, you know, over and over again. I couldn't have done it without Mr. Fox. Thank you so much. Best chemistry teacher in the history of the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But hey, let's be realistic. It's probably not going to happen. If it does happen, you know, I'll take you out to Ruth's Chris and we will live it up. All right. But if not, hey, we're shooting for a 79. A 79 will get you a 5. Now, maybe this year might be harder than last year, so maybe a 75 could get you a 5. So our goal is to get in the 70s. If you can get in the 70s, you're going to get a 4 or 5, okay? Depending on the year. I've seen it as low as a 72 be a cutoff for the 5, and as high as a 79 as a cutoff for a 5, okay? So that's what you're shooting for, okay? So you have 20% wiggle room. Understand that, okay? So I would say the next test taking strategy is understand that these are the basic topics right here that the questions are going to be asked about. Now, there might be some random lab thing in there, something like that, but the majority of the questions, we're talking 90, 95% of the questions, they're going to fall under one of those categories, right? Unit 1 was all about structure, whether it's atomic structure or molecular structure, right? Unit 2, solutions and stoichiometry. Unit 3, KMT and gases. And we also did thermo there, but you know, thermo is also covered again in thermodynamics. All right. So it's gonna fall under one of these umbrellas, but College Board likes to fluff it up. So there's gonna be a lot of stuff in there, a lot of stuff you don't need to know about. Like, okay, they brought up gas chromatography. You don't know what that is. Who cares? It's gonna be one of these questions. Figure it out. You know all the skills. All right. So cut through the fat, figure out, oh, this is an equilibrium question. Oh, this is a KSP, but a common ion question. This is a Q calculation question. This is a KA question. This is a buffer question, right? It's all gonna fall under these categories. So the sooner you figure out which category falls under, the easier it's gonna be. It's reading comprehension, all right? All right, so cut through the fat, okay? So here is, you know, here what I did was I went into each of these topics and I went through the majority of the test is gonna fall under here. So if it's atomic or molecular structure, it's gonna be something in this category. Now there's a lot of stuff in there, but you know, hybridization, SP, SP2, SP3, SP4, or SP3D, SP3D2, intermolecular forces. You know about those, make sure you go back and review those, right? So it's gonna fall under these, okay? Now the ones I highlighted are the ones that get asked the majority, the amount of time. So if you take the structure, the gases KMT, And the acid base, that's going to be a big chunk of the test. And I'll show you what I mean by that later. But the questions are going to be, 90% of the questions are going to fall under one of these topics here, right? So know that going in, okay? Now, if you want to cover your bases, you're shooting for that 100%. Mr. Fox said he's going to take me to Ruth's Chris if I get 100% on the AP exam. And I will. But then that means that then instead of just looking at this, you need to get out your visible learning objectives and look through all of those, because that's where 100% of the test can be found, all right? But here's 90% of the test right here, okay? And again, we're shooting for, if we can get 79, we got a 5, okay? So the other thing is that it's been posted, and I've kind of highlighted already, is again, if you have limited time to review, units 1 and 3, big chunk of the exam. Unit 5, big chunk of the exam. Now, everything else is going to be represented, but acid base and those are going to be represented the most. All right? Okay. So the other test taking skill is, that I think it's a good thing. This will be more important on the AP exam. Where am I going? More important on the AP exam. Than your final exam, because your final exam you have the checklist, right? Your final exam you have the checklist, and you know what's going to be on the FRQ and what's absolutely going to be on the multiple choice. Okay, but this will be a good test taking skill for the AP exam, right? So you'll take your multiple choice, and then you'll have a 15-minute break, and then you'll take your free response, or maybe just a 10-minute break. I don't know, however they break it down. But during that break, you should be thinking about which of these topics was covered the most in the multiple choice, and understand, like, if there was a lot of acid-base stuff in the multiple choice, then that means maybe there's not going to be that much acid-base stuff in the free response, right? If there's a lot of structure questions on the multiple choice, then there's not going to be a lot of structure stuff on the free response. So if you noticed, like, maybe the multiple choice was kind of lacking, there was maybe a couple acid-based questions, but not many, then now you know that one of your first 3 questions 1, 2, and 3 on the free response, the ones that are worth 10 points, probably going to be a heavy acid-based one, right? Or if there wasn't much equilibrium, then you know that question 1, 2, or 3 on the FRQ are going to be, it's going to be heavy equilibrium. Or maybe there was no thermo, not much thermo, or not much kinetics. So you know one of your free response questions is going to be in one of those, heavy in one of those categories. So what was not represented on multiple choice will be represented on the free response, and get your mind ready for that. And be like, oh yeah, question 1, it's an acid base, and I was expecting it. I'm right into acid base mode. Question 2, it's all thermo and electro, and there was not much thermo and electro on the multiple choice, and I already figured that out, so I'm ready to go. Okay? All right, so this handout is released by College Board, and it kind of has all the test taking strategies here. But the main thing is, write on your test, annotate it, especially the free response. As soon as you realize something is told, they somehow tell you that a reaction is exothermic or endothermic by telling you that the bonds of the reactants are stronger, or maybe they tell you that the reaction vessel got hotter, or the reaction. As soon as they give you some sort of information, or delta H is positive, or delta, highlight that and say exo, or highlight that and say endo, because especially the way the test is structured now, right? You might be on page 4 of the actual test answering question 1, letter G, and you need to reference something from part A, which is on page 1 of the test. And so make sure you annotate, okay? The other main things is, make sure you're using the right words. Remember when I yell at you when you use the word bond for IMFs, where do they have that? Okay. May the intermolecular force be with you, okay? The forces within a molecule, intra, the forces between molecules, inter. Where does it say? Oh, words. Okay, it's not acceptable to refer to an atom as a molecule or an ion, right? An atom is neutral, an ion is not. A molecule is a few atoms bonded together, not just a single atom, all right? And then you cannot refer to an intermolecular force as a bond. You can use the word bond in describing an IMF, but the word hydrogen better be in front of it or it's not going to work, okay? So this handout, again, is given to you. You might want to check that out. This is straight from College Board. But a word of warning, this was published before they made the free response section 105 minutes. So this 16 minutes and then 10 minutes, 16 minutes for the longer questions and 10 minutes for the shorter ones. That was when the free response was also 90 minutes. So now that it's 105, this is more like 20. And again, this is, 20 to 23, and the shorter questions are 7 to 8, or 7 to 10, depending. All right. So that's it. Get to reviewing.